Hello everyone, it is Shadowswalm, and I'm going to present you guys some of the top 10 bosses from Vanilla WoW I thought were extremely annoying or difficult to deal with. And I'm going to start right off with this a-hole right in front of me, Vicidius. He wasn't difficult to deal with, just annoying because you had to have Frost Mages in your raid and your rogues, warriors, whoever can use melee weapon enchants to have icy weapon on their weapons to help deal with this guy. Otherwise, you would not be able to kill him. You had to be able to do, I think it was 300,000 damage in frost damage. And yeah, not many guilds back then, or not many mages back then wanted to play frost. They all wanted to be fire for Pyro, Presence of Mind, Pyroblast, which was insanely powerful in PvP. But it is what it is. That was vanilla. And again, this is just going to be a list of annoying or difficult bosses. And yeah, this one starts my list off at number 10. You can see Vicidius in AQ40, and he was considered an optional boss at the time. Coming in at number 9 on the list is Princess Huhuran in AQ40 as well. She was both difficult to deal with and just annoying to deal with because of her life drain ability and the need for nature resistance gear on just about all of your raid. The only people that were exempt from getting any sort of nature resist were usually the tanks, but you would generally have them get nature resistance gear as well. The idea behind Huhuran was she does massive amounts of nature damage, so you need to have nature resistance gear in order to survive any of her attacks. She would also go ahead and toss a life drain ability that would go onto the, or a dot onto the ability, and then, or to the raid at that. I can't even talk right now. But yeah, she would infect the raid with the poisonous dot, and then at certain points of the fight, she would sap health from the raid, and if you moved at a certain time, because when she was life draining everyone, nobody could move. If you moved at a certain time, she would instead wind up sucking the poison from everyone, and she would kill herself pretty rapidly that way. But that wasn't found out until a couple of weeks after most guilds had killed Huhuran. But nonetheless, you still needed your nature resistance gear, and it was just a nightmare. I remember having over 350 nature resistance on my warrior using the Hand of Ragnaros just for Huhuran, because that's what was required during that time in vanilla. Number 8 we will see very shortly. Of Molten Core, Lucifron. Now, he wasn't difficult, just annoying because his two Flamewalker protectors would toss curses out where the mages in the raid and druids would have to decurse, and he would also mind control some of your raid members, and most of the time it had tendency to mind control healers, and healers were the ones who could only dispel themselves pretty much. This is before all healers got the ability to dispel like everything, not just one thing, not just magic, curses, or poisons. Because you needed shamans, you needed priests, you needed druids, you needed everything just for this one boss. And that's why he was just annoying to deal with, because he would curse the entire raid, make them take less healing, and he would mind control just random players. And yeah, that's no fun. So yeah, that's number 8. Number 7 on the list is going to be Shazra in Molten Core as well, and I'm also going to toss Baron Geddon into the number 7 category as well. Shazra, because your melee were pretty much useless on Shazra. You would have to have your warriors and your rogues stand out at range, use thrown weapons, or use their bow, use whatever they had as a ranged weapon. And yeah, if you had any melee up on the boss, your tanks were sure to pretty much die because he would teleport randomly to different groups of people and do an arcane explosion, and you had to split the damage up, split the raid up into multiple different parties. Shazra was not a fun fight for melee at all. That's why I say he's annoying. And Baron Geddon, you've all heard of the whole Geddon bomb scenario back in vanilla where, you'd have raid members go on top of other raid members with the living bomb and then blow those raid members up. That's Baron Geddon. He would throw a living bomb on somebody, and 9 out of 10 times you would tank Baron Geddon somewhere around this range right over here. He would be right over here, and everybody else would be somewhere in this hallway right about here. You'd either tank him right about here, everybody else close to this side, and then whoever gets the living bomb runs into here, so that way when they get knocked up, they're not just shot straight up and die due to falling damage. They get knocked up, hit a hard ceiling, low ceiling like right over here, get knocked up, hit the ceiling, come back down, and still be alive. Healers just have to heal them back up. But that was the most annoying part of the fight, and people who didn't know what they were doing would cause wipes. So that's why I'm clumping Shazra and Baron Geddon into number 7. Number 6 is going to be Major Domo Executus, because each one of his Flamewalkers had to be dealt with in one way or another. You'd never actually killed Major Domo Executus himself, because you'd have to start up the RAG event with him, but each one of his Flamewalker elites required their own tank, the healers required their own tank. After a certain point of getting Blackwing layer gear and just about being fully Blackwing layer geared out, you'd be able to have one tank have 2 or all of the Flamewalker healers, but each one of the Flamewalker elites would almost definitely need to be solo tanked by somebody. You couldn't have a tank have 2 of them at the same time, because that was just too much damage. So, yeah, this was like the first introduction fight of not actually killing the boss, but instead killing all of his ads to start up the next boss fight. Otherwise, very, very simple fight, just super annoying to deal with all of his ads that would all heal each other, and upon each one dying, I believe, if memory serves me correct, the others would go back to full health. So, very annoying fight, very long fight. The number 5 most annoying or difficult fight in all of Vanilla WoW, from my experience at least, Ragnaros, inside of Molten Core. You guys probably saw this coming, but yeah, he was annoying to deal with. Between a 3-phase fight, it being a 10-minute long fight, and each person having to play their role perfectly in order to kill the boss, it was very, very, very difficult, tedious boss fight. This is back when warriors had different stances. If any quest got knocked into the lava, which was all around the room, you would pretty much be guaranteed to die. Warriors would be able to charge back to the boss. Rogues would be able to fall safely with safe fall. Same thing with druids. Hunters would be able to deterrence. But if you fell into lava, you were probably going to die on this boss fight. And if you didn't kill the ads, you were probably going to die. So that's why he comes in number 5 for most difficult and or annoying boss in vanilla. The number 3 most annoying fight in vanilla World of Warcraft to me, or the most difficult, has to be Razorgore the Untamed. Now, this is the introduction boss to Blackwing Lair, the technical third raid of vanilla WoW. The reason why I say he's the hardest, or third hardest, or difficult, or annoying, is because you see all these eggs around the room. You would have to kill all these eggs using Razorgore and using that orb up on the pedestal with the Orb of Domination. So this fight entailed a two-phase encounter. You would have ads spawning from all these little cubby holes. Your warrior tanks or paladin tanks, if you had them, if you were Alliance back in vanilla, or if you had a druid tank back in vanilla, they would pick up the humanoid ads coming out of all these cubby holes on each corner, and the hunters in your raid would be picking up the dragonkin and kiting them all around this room in a clockwise or counterclockwise fashion, depending on how the hunters felt they could do it. It didn't matter which hunter did it, all hunters had to do it. Now, that's not the worst part of the fight. The worst part is the ads would sometimes just lose threat on the hunters and would start beating your healers up, and that would throw everything off, and it was a big chaotic fight for a full 40-man. Figure having anywhere between 5 to 7 hunters all kiting around in a circle all at the same time, and the only way they're getting threat on ads is distracting shot. That's not the best way to get threat when healers are more prone to pull threat with healing. So yes, your warriors hated this fight, your hunters hated this fight, your healers hated this fight, and this is the reason why all introduction bosses are super easy or easy enough to be classified as first bosses, because he was just a complete and utter nightmare to deal with as a first boss. And his counterpart on the other side of this gate right here, we'll talk about in just a minute. Number 2 on my most annoying or most difficult bosses in Vanilla WoW has to be Valstrez the Corrupt. If you were able to get your coordination down for Razorgore the Untamed, the first boss inside of Blackwing Lair, you then had to deal with Valstrez the Corrupt. There was just about no trash between Razorgore. Well, first of all, there was no trash to the first boss, and very minimal trash to Valstrez. You had just a few minor ads you had to deal with that start running away the second you enter the room, which looks like they've despawned since I've killed them. But they would drop some ore and some gold and a couple of other things. They were pretty useful throughout the rest of the raid, but Valstrez the Corrupt required you to have multiple people with fire resistance and multiple people willing to sacrifice themselves as the quote-unquote tank, and your DPS not to be idiots and stand off to the side and pull threat. I happen to be an arms warrior back in vanilla with the Untamed Blade that drops off of Razorgore, the first boss, which had a proc of giving you, I believe it was 200 strength, plus Crusader, which would give you 300 strength, and as a warrior, that's 600 attack power. Combine that with sword specialization as arms, and Wind Fury Totem with Shaman in your group, and you have a recipe for disaster, to where I wiped our raid group multiple times, and had to switch from using a sword to using a axe, because sword specialization was too overpowered. With Wind Fury back in vanilla, I would pull threat on Valstrez and completely wipe the healers and ranged DPS, because Valstrez would just breathe on everyone and they would explode. So yes, Valstrez lands at number 2, and you guys will never ever guess what is number 1 on the list. The number 1 most difficult or annoying boss in Vanilla WoW, the Window Boss. A lot of you don't know, but back in Vanilla, this guy was not here for a long time when Molten Core was the main raid. At about, well, he was here, but you would only pick up the quest to get attuned to Molten Core from him. After that, he wouldn't do anything. Like, there was nothing for him to do, and you would have to jump through this window right here to zone inside of Molten Core. Nowadays, you can still do that, but people would fail to realize that that's what they had to do, so you'd have guild send 2 or 3 party members all the way through Blackrock Depths, and summon everybody to the zone-in, or the entrance right there, inside of Blackrock Depths to Molten Core, because it's technically a continuation from one raid to another, because Blackrock Depths was considered a raid at the time with how many bosses it had in it. Then they, shortly after that, they chopped it up into sections and made it a 5-man, just like they did with Scholomance and Stratholm. They chopped it up into 2 different sections, 3 different sections, and made it a 5-man. But the only way to get into Molten Core for the longest time was to jump through this window right here next to the quest giver once you were attuned. And back in the day, you'd have 90, 100 people plus standing in front of this guy. If you were on a PvP server, you could expect World PvP to be happening. I remember fondly logging onto my priest just to mind control people from over here into the lava and watch them just continuously die and have to log off for the night because they couldn't get out of said lava. Mind you, there is a way out, just you have to come all the way here and then come all the way around to right here. But most people back in those days didn't realize that, and they would just continuously die in lava. So to counteract that, they made this guy able to teleport you to Molten Core as well once you were attuned. But yes, the window boss is my #1 most difficult or annoying boss to deal with inside of vanilla WoW.